I want to just tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about why I'm exploring this run for governor. So, first, I'm a dad. My wife Sarah and I have 3 little kids. They're 8, 6, and 4. We moved to Hartford from New Haven about 12 years ago. My wife got a job teaching up at UConn Law School, and that's what originally brought us up to Hartford. I'm a veteran. I served in Afghanistan as a Navy intelligence officer. I joined while I was in law school because it seemed to me that it was a burden that was pretty narrowly shared, and I decided it was important to step up. So I was proud to serve on the anti-corruption task force over in Afghanistan at the end of 10 and part of 11. I served for 4 years in the Obama administration. So I was there for the first Obama term, the very early days as part of the team that was responding right in the wake of the financial crisis. So part of the team that helped develop and pass what became the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Consumer Financial Protection Act that took aim at a lot of the abusive practices that helped lead to the financial crisis, including helping to set up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which Donald Trump is now trying hard to dismantle, as he dismantled much of our federal government regulatory structure. For the second half of that time in the Obama administration, I ran the office called the Office of Terrorist Financing and Financial Crime. It's the policy and diplomacy office that's charged with trying to cut off the flow of funds to terrorist groups, international organized crime, and at the time, trying to put pressure on countries like Iran to drive them to the negotiating table, which ultimately happened. And of course, the Obama administration got a deal done, which Donald Trump is now trying to rip up. After those 4 years, Sarah and I decided to come back to Connecticut. And we came back then with 2 kids, the third soon on the way. And I had a chance to serve for 2 years as the chief legal counsel to the governor. And in that role, in addition to all of the things you'd expect a lawyer to do, I also got to work on a lot of policy issues that were close to my heart, including being part of the effort to enact the common sense gun laws that Connecticut enacted after the tragedy at Sandy Hook. Was part of a big push on a lot of environmental issues, including with the Connecticut Green Bank, but also in open space preservation. Worked quite a bit on the preserve just down the road, which I had the chance to hike with my kids just last spring, and it was beautiful. Got to work on a goal that I pushed the administration to set, which was trying to make Connecticut the first state in the country to end chronic homelessness for veterans. And at the time, a lot of people thought it was a crazy goal because it couldn't be achieved. We are one of 2 states in the country that's been recognized by the federal VA as having ended chronic veterans homelessness. That doesn't mean there aren't veterans sleeping without a roof over their head some nights, but for those who've been chronically homeless, they're now in a pipeline to sustained housing. They have that set of supports out there that they need. And then lastly, worked a lot on laying the groundwork for the criminal justice reforms that became known as the Second Chance Society. Trying to get smarter about how we use our criminal justice system and recognizing the unintended consequences of over-incarceration. So what I took from all of that, from the time as the governor's general counsel, from the time in the Obama administration, just to me what's really at the heart of what it means to be a Democrat, which is that we believe that government can be a tremendously powerful force for good, and it can transform people's lives and communities' lives and states' lives. And so that's why 3 years ago, I decided to run for mayor. I looked around at the city that Sarah and I had come to call home, and it's a great city. It's got incredible history, incredible arts and culture, incredible people, but it was on the wrong track. And I was frustrated by a lot of the decisions that were being made. So I stepped up and I ran, and nobody thought it was a race that I could win, but ran it hard and won it. And over the past couple of years, had to confront a fiscal crisis that's unprecedented, certainly in our capital city's history, and arguably the worst fiscal crisis in our state's history. And we dealt with it honestly and openly, transparently, and moved the ball a long way down the field toward sustainability by building partnerships, again, that a lot of people didn't think possible, whether it was with our labor unions, and sometimes those were tough negotiations, but we made some really important change together. Building partnerships with our biggest companies and getting them re-engaged in the city's future and putting skin in the game. Building partnerships across the aisle. And in that bipartisan budget, in that tough budget year, helping to lay out a set of tools that could actually address the long-term problem in a real way, not just kick the can. But maybe most importantly, even as we did those things and faced a crisis, refused to let the city be defined by crisis. And so if you spend any time there lately, you can see just a different level of energy and activity in the city. You can see feet on the street, after 5 o'clock and on weekends. You can see private investment coming in and turning blighted, vacant commercial buildings back into fully occupied residential communities. And when I look around the state of Connecticut right now, I see a state that is facing the same kind of crossroads that the city of Hartford did 3 years ago. We have a very real fiscal crisis that we're going to have to continue to handle transparently and honestly. But at the same time, we have to lay out the path for growth. We have to lay out that vision that gets people believing in the state's future, that they can have confidence in the plan and the path that we're on. And I'm happy to talk in detail about what I think we need to do for economic development. I'm going to leave that for Q&A just so we can get to Q&A. But let me just say this. There is an enormous amount at stake for every one of our communities across the state, big and small. City, suburb, small town alike. There is an enormous amount at stake for our state. I think that our state's future, the next 10 or 20 years, is going to be decided by what happens in the next 2 to 4 years. But I also think that this election has enormous consequences for our country. Yesterday we saw a state representative district that in 2016 went Republican by 25 points, and yesterday it went blue. We've got incredible candidates like Christine and like Norm running in our districts. We've got candidates signing up all over the state to challenge districts that haven't been competitive. We can win this, and we have to win it. Because I don't think it's going too far to say that the future of our country hinges on whether we send a powerful message about the direction of our nation this November. As mayor, I've been proud to stand up to Donald Trump as they bullied sanctuary cities. I've been proud to push and to pass ordinances that help protect a woman's right to exercise her right to choose, even as the Trump administration is defunding Planned Parenthood. And I am proud that Connecticut, for all our challenges, has been at the vanguard of the movement to fight back against the assault on our democracy and American values from Washington. We need to keep Connecticut in that lead. I hope to earn your support along the way. It's great to be with you tonight, and I'd love to have a conversation and take some questions. Thank you very much.
So, with your big city experience, I think all of us from small towns would like to know, we value our independence, and there's an increasing push towards regionalization, which has both pros and cons. And we want to know really how you see the balance between big city needs, where most of our tax dollars go, and our life in our towns, which we love and value.
Sure. So I'm happy to talk about regionalism, and I'll come back to that. But the real answer to your question is this. To me, what's going to decide whether we all can keep the things we love in this state is whether we can get the state growing again. And so here are the things I think we need to do that. Number one, I do believe, and I don't change my tune wherever I go, I do believe you've got to have strong, vibrant cities to be competitive. That's not about cities versus suburbs. But if you look around the country at those states that are beating us in the competition for growth, that aren't facing a constant fiscal crisis, they're seeing that growth driven by strong, vibrant cities. You don't have to be a big Boston or a big New York. You can be small and vibrant. But if you don't have that, you have a hard time keeping your local town, your young town. You have a hard time attracting young talent. That means you have a hard time keeping and attracting the employers that are looking to hire that young talent. Look, GE didn't go to Boston because of taxes. Aetna wasn't going to go to New York because of taxes, and Mass Mutual didn't go to Boston and Springfield because of taxes. In each case, it was because they thought that's where the energy and the activity and the young people were. So we've got to make sure we have strong, vibrant cities. But that's not cities versus suburbs. If you've got strong cities, it helps drive the growth that lifts us all up. And by the way, I bet if you did a poll of people in the room where their kids or grandkids are, a lot of them are in cities outside Connecticut. And if you kept them in a city in Connecticut, then when they start having kids, they're going to move right back to Essex or Chester or Deep River. So that's one. Two, a number of candidates have talked about transportation, and I'm really excited that there's a consensus growing among the Democrats that we have to have electronic tolls. We're crazy to be one of the only states on the eastern seaboard that doesn't have it. And the one place that I might differ from some others is I think we need to put as much of that revenue as possible into upgrading our rail infrastructure. If you put New Haven within an hour or an hour and 10 minutes of New York, you change the game for New Haven, but you also change the game for every community along that line. And if you also, instead of cutting commuter service on Shoreline East, or the Waterbury-Danbury lines, you invest in that just as we were investing now in the New Haven to Hartford to Springfield line, you open up enormous growth potential for the entire state. Our two biggest strengths are on either side of us, New York and Boston, and people are getting priced out of both of them every single day. But we can't take advantage of it because we don't have the transportation system to do it. So those are the two things. And then the third thing has also been talked a little about tonight. I was glad to hear your question, sir, about Pt6 schools. I think we have a huge opportunity in the growth that's projected in advanced manufacturing. I think we've way underemphasized our Pt6 schools, and I think we have not built the programs at our community colleges and our state college and university system to fill the jobs that are coming. Every one of those advanced manufacturing companies, they're raising their hands and saying, we don't see the workforce ready to hire. So we've got to focus on that. And by the way, it's not just advanced manufacturing. In 2015, there were 6,500 jobs open, unfilled, in coding around the state of Connecticut. And that year, we graduated 400 students in computer science. We have to make sure our educational system is preparing people for the jobs today. So those are the three biggest things. And I'm not, I would talk longer than you want me to about regionalization. But if we want to be able to keep our community strong and not face constant budget cuts, we got to grow, and that's how I think you grow. Now, I know I'm talking way too long, I'm sorry. But let me just say this, on this one question. I do believe that if we were building a state from scratch, you wouldn't take a state of 3.5 million people and carve it into 169 towns and duplicate every single service in every single one. I also believe that there are opportunities to share service without losing the essence of what we love about our towns. Chris Dodd used to tell this great story of, I think it was Abe Ribblecoff, who used to go to every town in Connecticut, and he'd say the same thing whenever he arrived there. He said, I was driving in here and I thought to myself, don't change a thing. And there's truth to that, because our communities are so beautiful in this state. And there's so much to love about our New England local charm. But if we want to keep that, we're going to have to change the way we do some things, because what we're doing right now isn't working. Yes.
I've heard you mention second chance society legislation, and I'm very committed to that. And I'd like to know if, as governor, you continue the work on corrections reform begun by the governor and Mike Waller and Commissioner Semple. They've done a lot of good things, but there's a lot more to do.
This was the first public policy issue that I got passionate about. So when I was in college at Yale, I tutored at the New Haven Correctional Center. And I taught GED classes, and I did some writing tutoring. And I became convinced then, this was in the late 90s, that we were deeply misguided in the way we were punishing people. And I now serve as mayor of a city that was devastated in many ways by our over-incarceration. The number of families that were broken apart, the number of kids that grew up without parents, not because they were hurting other people, but because they were using or possessing drugs. So we have a long legacy of mistakes that we have to make up for. I'm a big supporter of what's been done so far. And at the local level, we're trying to do a lot ourselves, particularly on reentry. Because the truth is, no matter what somebody did, when they get out, you gotta help try to make it possible for them to be successful. And right now, too many times when someone gets out of prison and they come back, and thousands come back to my city every year, they're living with a barrier that they can't overcome because most private employers won't look past that record. So we got grant funding that we went after to set up a reentry center. For the next 3 years funded, it's a pilot, we're gonna build it to be a one-stop shop where when folks come back to the community, they can get the support that they need to figure out how do they navigate this world that's now unfamiliar, and how do they connect it with employers that are willing to look past that record. So this is an issue I'm very passionate about.